Hi, Swati.
Hello, Lina. How are you?
It's so good to be in conversation with you because you actually are one of the best conversationalists I've ever listened to.
The feeling is mutual.
And you remember when I last heard you, I said you missed one of your callings in life.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
I have I probably pay just as much to come and see you on stage as I would Trevor Noah. So
Oh, that's the mwah, biggest compliment. Biggest compliment. Thank you, Lina. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be SwaLina.
So I'm going to start with the questions because you are such an awesome speaker, and a lot of what we're doing at Dreamtime Learning is outlined in the NEP document. We've been,
Yes.
I did it for years in Kangaroo Kids and Billabong High already, and yet it still for me was an outdated way of teaching and learning, and so Dreamtime Learning's come along, but it'd be great if you could just make some connections between the NEP document and our scriptures. And I'll tell you why I'm saying that, because a lot of the influence for Dreamtime Learning has come from people like Anthony Robbins, John DeMartini, sort of life coaches. And whenever I go to them, what I see on stage is what they are doing and teaching and transforming, even though they're Westerners, is absolutely so connected to the scriptures. So I'd love to see you kind of create that connection for us.
Absolutely. First of all, Lina, congratulations on Dreamtime Learning. I always say, what is Lina going to think of next? And when this concept is absolutely brilliant, and it is, as you said, it is so much in line with the NEP. The NEP is focused on both neuroscience and traditional Indian educational systems. And if any of you watching are watching Lina's Facebook posts, they also have a combination of these two. So coming back to your question, NEP and its roots in our scriptures, two of the things that stand out for me in the NEP are Panchakosh and Panchadi. And I have recently made a document which I will be putting out very soon. Maybe I'll put it up first on Dreamtime Learning and let it get go out from there. I've compared the Panchakosh to Maslow's hierarchy of needs because we think Maslow's hierarchy of needs is what we understand. But where did that thought come from? It came thousands of years back in the Panchakosh of the Indian education system, where we talk about not only the physical body needs, but also the inner body needs. So, if you see the Panchakosh, it also addresses that. For example, if a child is not able to focus, the child will not be able to sit. So focusing is an inner body requirement, and sitting is an outer body requirement. So your inner and outer body are entwined, and if you don't take care of both, uh, learning will not happen. And that's what the Panchakosh is all about. When you talk about Panchadi are the 5 learning steps of a lesson plan which have been outlined in our NEP. And I made a comparison to Bloom's taxonomy because schools relate to that. That this is how learning happens. These are the stages in it which happen. And if you see the stages of Panchadi, Aditi Bodh goes right up to Prasar. Prasar means I've not only learned it, I'm now able to talk about it. So the application, analytic, everything comes into it. And where did it come from? From our ancient scriptures. So see how far ahead we were till somebody put a full stop, and that somebody was Macaulay's education system. And we came to a full stop and we started looking at that education system as the right education system. And then we needed pioneers like you who made everybody rethink that this is not the way it's supposed to be done. So if we need to embrace the wealth that we have in our Indian scriptures, in our slokas, in everything, whether it's to do with science, technology, we were way ahead. And that's why I'm so happy that the NEP has revived these advances that we already had, and now brought it in front of us.
So it's amazing because as a girl growing up in Australia, the mystical side of India, the spiritual side of India, always had intense allure for me. And in in just looking at some of it, it's amazing how much of neuroscience and behavioral science is embedded within it, right? So some of the
Absolutely.
things you spoke about, one of the key things in the Dreamtime learning curriculum is getting kids to understand, and it's amazing that it was in our scriptures, but that this is the attention economy,
Ah,
and whoever masters their attention will be king. So
absolutely.
I can, you asked me, how do I get through so much? Because I have to master my attention. If I want to be a creator, I can either be a consumer or I can be a creator.
Yes.
And so that's, so one of the things is that we want kids to understand that it's not technology that's bad. It's if we allow technology to have power over us rather than us having power over technology. So some of the things we will teach kids about is when you're looking at your friend's page and you're looking at all the happiness there, how does that speak to your brain? What is, in terms of scarcity, what does it make your brain think about?
Yes.
And why should you understand that your friends will always be posting their love and their engagement and their success, but very rarely post their vulnerabilities, their fears, their uh, their divorces or anything else like that.
Absolutely.
The second thing you spoke about very interestingly is there's three pillars of the Dreamtime learning curriculum: absorb, interact, and create. The first is the first part of that is a hook. So we want to get the brain really curious and excited or emotionally triggered
Involved.
by
Yeah.
what we're going to learn in that session. So we start off with a hook, then it's the material a concept that they will understand, then they interact with it in a powerful way, but then because of those steps they have to create something before they end the session, because the
Wow.
future, as you and I know, with AI, however we embrace or don't embrace AI, however, wherever it is there. Somebody asked me, but shouldn't we be scared of AI or shouldn't we put legalities around it? I said, the train's already left the station.
Yeah. Already
So
long
so it's too late to get the train back. Now it's gone. So now we've got to figure out, what are the guardrails we put around it. But yeah, but the fact is that creation is going to be the way of the future, and even asking questions to create.
Yes, yes. That's where the crux of learning lies. That are we asking the right questions? Because to create, you will have to question.
Yeah. And so the last part spoke about the inner self. A lot of the Dreamtime learning curriculum is teaching kids about how every thought they think actually changes the structure of their brain. And
Mm,
every thought they think changes the structure of their body because it has an emotional release, right? The
yes.
thought creates an emotional release that affects the actions the kids will take, the decisions and actions that they will take, and that will create their habits. And obviously, that'll create the outcome of their lives. And
Brilliant.
there's very concrete ways of doing that with very, very little kids. So I'm going to ask you, Swati, what do you believe about conscious learning? I mean, how do you see its place in a school setting today, school setting, home setting, and what do you think is the importance and the impact a conscious learning system could have?
So I'm very glad you asked that because Lina, you and I both have been firm believers in conscious learning, uh, and most people don't understand the difference. Uh, but most of the time, what's happening in most classrooms in most schools in this country is unconscious learning. Even when you go to a B.Ed college and you see the teachers, it's unconscious learning happening. There is no conscious learning. So for me, very simply put, conscious learning is when you know what you are learning, You are in your mind assimilating the knowledge that's coming in, and you are also applying it in your mind that, oh, this thing, this is how I do it. Okay. So you are already having conversations in your mind about the learning that's entering your mind. So, which means you are that host to that learning, which is at that door, not only welcoming the guest, which is the learning, but also having a conversation with it. So, for me, conscious learning is that. Otherwise, it is like your brain has a door, learning is coming, going, nobody is there to, greet it, understand it, communicate with it, nothing. Aata hai, jata hai, chalta hai. It's that chalta hai attitude which happens in most learning areas. So, very simply to the lay person, when I have to put it, this is how I explain it, that conscious learning is you standing at the brain's door, welcoming that learning, communicating with that learning, and even having a discussion with that learning. And then saying, okay, I like you, and this is where I'm going to store you because this is the situation in which I'm going to require you. So that is conscious learning. And that I feel first teachers need to be acclimatized to before they will be able to check or nurture or support conscious learning classrooms. Because if you have not experienced conscious learning, you won't be able to bring it out in your classroom. So I think when I have a session and some people say, I have a question, I have a question, I like it, because that means this person was having conscious learning, maybe did not have the social learning that whether I should ask it now or later. So I like it when people stop my session and say, can I ask you this question? Because for me that means they are embracing conscious learning, and they are discussing it in their brain and they want that answer. Some people don't like to be interrupted because they feel it's a lecture. I will lose my train of thought. You've heard of those people who say, don't interrupt me during my session, I lose my train of thought. They are also unconscious lecturers, because if you are a conscious person, you would know what your audience wants, how to connect with them, what's working for them and what's not working for them. So for me, I feel conscious learning is all about that. You can go into the jargon which is given on the internet, but for me, simply put, this is what conscious learning is.
So we spoke about conscious learning, and I want to do two things in a second. I want to talk about conscious, unconscious that you spoke about, and subconscious. All
Yes.
three, yeah. And so let's start with that. Uh, how do you see the difference between what happens in a classroom in terms of conscious learning, which you've just explained, unconscious learning, which is you've explained as well. What about subconscious learning, and how important is that?
So, Lina, I experienced subconscious learning through my parents. My dad was all about muttering. He would never directly tell me or lecture me. He would have that expression of unhappiness or happiness on his face, or he will just make a comment in passing, which is not even directed to me, and that became his subconscious parenting, which seeped into me. For example, I used to read a lot of Mills and Boon books when I was a teenager. And he just came into my room once, saw the title, and said, gutter literature. So that's it. He didn't say, why are you reading this book? It's not good. You should read better literature. He just in passing said gutter literature. And that was subconscious because it played on me like anything. I changed my reading style completely after that. I don't pick up a Mills and Boon now. So subconscious learning in children happens when you think that they are not watching us, but sometimes your words, your expressions, the activity that you are doing could be so interesting. The style with which you are doing it, they are watching you. So you may not be doing it to teach them, but they watch you. And that is subconscious learning, which is not, that wasn't the lesson of the day, but they learned from you how to hold a particular thing in a particular way because they were learning by imitation. So that is subconscious learning for me.
So one of the things we do through the curriculum is a lot of our a lot of trauma gets stored in our subconscious,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So I didn't know why I was really scared of moths because my logical brain said, but Lina, a moth is just like a black butterfly, and you're not scared of butterflies, so why are you scared of moths? Till I found out that when I was living in India for 3 years, into the bathroom came a bat and
Oh,
flapped around till it was unconscious and I was unconscious. So there's conscious, subconscious, unconscious, all there. But obviously that that had seeped into my subconscious in such a way that every time I saw anything black and that fluttered, it would set off, even though I didn't have
mm,
absolute memory of that. And today it's when we are studying epigenetics and stuff like that, we're kind of understanding how how much our subconscious actually drives every aspect of our being. So one of the things we consciously do in our curriculum is teach kids about their subconscious.
uh-huh.
And we give them the tools and strategies. So, sorry, to get kids to just firstly consciously think about their thoughts, just to be aware, to have mindfulness that, okay, this is a thought, and is this a negative thought? Is this a positive thought? Is this thought going to have me move forward, or is this thought going to keep me stuck? Just some simple, very simple things like that. And then giving them tools and strategies to overcome
Come,
if they've
okay.
got a habit of rumination because of something a parent could have said or a teacher could have said. We don't even pick up how if a kid puts up his hand and we ignore the child, what has the child subconscious picked up? I'm
Hmm.
not worthy.
Yeah,
I'm,
yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
not clever. I got so so these are the three levels of the brain that need to be addressed in any learning system: the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious, and unconscious biases and stuff like that. And we make that all visible to kids. The
Wow.
second thing I want to ask you is, for me, I think the greatest shift we need to do in our learning and teaching is to teach for higher consciousness,
Right.
right? And as I grow, and maybe one part of it is I'm growing older, and I realize the collection of more and more toys, more and more
Hmm.
cars, houses, it is eventually not going to, is not the way forward. And one of the greatest things today, somebody sent me on a TikTok video, is this guy who's saying, here you are collecting your possessions, your cars, your grades, your accolades, your this, your that, not living in the moment. And you know your grandchildren's children who will eventually inherit all that won't even know who you are,
Yeah.
won't even know your name possibly.
True.
And and when I started thinking about that, I started thinking about how true is that? We seem to want to buy, hoard, collect,
Hmm.
and in a way that we're kind of the earth is not going to be able to sustain.
True.
So, this absolute need for higher consciousness learning is something that I think has also come kind of from our scriptures. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
I think that's also very linked to subconscious because what today's generation will see us doing on social media, on the way we behave in with fashion or with shopping, subconsciously we are actually training them that this is the right way to do it. See, when a person I love does something, I feel it's right because the person I love did it. So I think that is where the interlinkage is there, and that is why it is very important for curriculums. And I'm so happy when you are connecting all this to your curriculum, Lina. It tells us that when you say futuristic curriculum, doesn't mean just preparing children for a future that they've not seen. It's preparing children for who they are so that they can make a better world. So for me, that is what comes out from this. So when you talk about super consciousness or conscious or unconscious or subconscious, it all boils down to what I see in this world. And at a very young age, children won't understand whether it's right and wrong. But if I in the curriculum were to give children that treasure of evaluation, understanding and evaluating, is this required? My friends are doing this, but do I require to do it? You know, that if that comes into a child's intelligence, that is true intelligence. Intelligence is not how much of memory I have, or how much of retention I had, or how much I'm able to blah blah to the world. The intelligence is that I'm surrounded by people who are telling me this is right, but I know with all my knowledge that it is wrong. So I will make the choice that I know is right choice, and not the one that was being put on me with pressure. So for me, that is super knowledge, and that is super consciousness.
So Swati, something very interesting we do, like we're constantly talking to the kids about why the world wants them to be consumers, right?
Hmm.
Everyone from Netflix to Facebook to everybody wants you to be a consumer. Whoever gets your attention gets your money,
Yes.
right? and so some of the interesting things we do is we'll talk to kids in maths about why is something sold at $5.99 instead of at $6.
Ah, the Bata prize.
We'll actually show kids how $6 speaks to the brain and how $5.99 speaks to the brain, how the
Yes.
marketing world speaks to your brain, how it creates that sense of scarcity, all of those things. And you know, one of the other interesting things you spoke about in terms of, we call it the paradox of choice.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's some very simple things we do, even in the preschool, is that we show kids two wardrobes. Here you've got one wardrobe, which has only black t-shirts or white t-shirts. And here you've got this really colorful wardrobe with sequins and, appliques and all sorts of cartoon characters and everything. And which wardrobe would you prefer? And all the kids will say this wardrobe, right?
Yes. Yes.
And we'll then show them how their brain reacts to this wardrobe and how their brain reacts to this wardrobe. That it's happier with this wardrobe than this wardrobe, but we've been fooled into thinking that this wardrobe is better for us.
True.
And anyone who's as an adult is watching us right now will understand this if I just put it in the context of Netflix. You know that
Yes.
one movie on Sundays that we used to have in India, or that Chaya Geet on Thursdays that we used to have, compared, and we used to all wait for it,
Yes.
right? So there's something to be said about not giving the brain and body everything it's asking for. And the problem is everything it's asking for is just so much in abundance around us that we don't know how to create that scarcity for ourselves, for our own happiness. And you compare that to today, us having the remote and having not only Netflix, but Prime and this and that and Voot and this one and that one and that one. Our brains get so overstressed with making a decision on what movie should we watch for our own pleasure.
Absolutely. You connected it so well, Lina. See, we had the boundaries when we were growing up. Now we are raising children in a world that has no boundaries. So we need to give them internal boundaries so that they will be able to control how the outside world doesn't interfere with who they are going to become. So well put. I'm so happy that it's there in your curriculum, really.
So, I think one of the major shifts when I sold the last company was thinking about, how we're always asking kids to gain mastery of things outside of themselves,
Yes.
content, everything outside of themselves, and how little time we get them to think about their thinking, to think about their emotions, um, um, to understand how to shift their thoughts and emotions,
Exactly.
how to understand what drives them as human beings, rather than a carrot or a stick. Can you find your own internal motivators and your own internal drivers so that you don't need a carrot or a stick? Um, their drives, their own needs, their strengths and their habits. Today I was speaking at the TIC conference and I just kind of said, why do we have a standard report card for everyone? Why can't every report card just say, this kid is brilliant at this, this, and this?
Yes, yes.
And
Compare
and
them
and,
to
and
themselves.
yeah,
Compare
yeah,
them compare the child to the child's previous performance. Why are you
Absolutely.
comparing it the child to some given benchmark?
And those benchmarks are all artificially created, right? I mean, in the sense that we've created assessments for measuring some outcome, and now we don't know how to get away from them. But imagine if a parent walked into a PTM and every parent was just told that your kid is, instead of saying your kid is hyperactive, is your kid is really active and could really do with,
Sports, yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So, you know what? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Lina, but this has been in my mind since a very long time, and I've always wanted to ask you this, that you created two great brands, Kangaroo Kids and Billabong, and then what made you now come out with Dreamtime Learning? What was your thought process behind it, and what is actually your goal? Because it is this going to disrupt the whole education system. It's a positive disruption because people are still, we had the pandemic and everybody thought, yes, education has changed. But post pandemic, everybody has gone back to those traditional classrooms. They've all ditched technology, and they think now we don't need technology, now we don't need technology. And then in this comes, as the dust of corona settles, and there comes this nice new brand called Dreamtime Learning. So what can you share, what made you come out with it?
So the first thing is, and something that we teach kids about is our reticular activation system,
Hmm.
right? So we have a reticular activation system in our brain, and it waits for our conscious signal to get a sense of direction. And from a spiritual sense, I have this great belief that there is a vast human consciousness brain, that there's enough to know that my mirror neurons will affect your mirror neurons,
Yes.
that what one monkey does in one forest affects another monkey in another forest, and so however we believe intelligence is, I believe there's an intelligence field that we can feed into and feed off. And our reticular activation system is almost like the antenna that turns certain our opportunities for something on or off based on us having fed it. So it was very interesting. I was doing a workshop with my brother. Got this Australian guy who still does a lot of work with our company in Australia, and he came and he did a workshop for us at KKEL. And he said, Lina, if you had a big, hairy, audacious goal, they call it a bhag. Peter Diamandis calls it your MTP. What is your massive transformational purpose? Yeah.
Okay.
And when I was interviewing Hector Garcia, the author of Ikigai, I suddenly said, okay, my Ikigai is to help kids find their Ikigai,
Ah.
right? So when he asked me what my big, hairy, audacious goal was, I said 1 billion learners. And he said, why 1 billion learners? Because he knows me well enough to know, even at Kangaroo Kids in Billabong High, which is why I don't think anyone ever wanted to keep me on. I don't really care about the top lines and bottom lines. When I was running Billabong High, I said I wanted to be the Harley of schools, right? We wanted to be a really loved brand by kids. So when I said 1 billion learners, I said, if we actually are to shift human consciousness, if we are going to find a way to have this planet be there for generations to come, if we truly believe we're only custodians of this planet, and we're not here to pillage, plunder, rape the planet of every resource it has, and then let the next generations figure out what they have to do, we will have to have a massive shift in human consciousness. And it wasn't going to do it by me having Billabong High and say having thousands of kids come out
Right.
at the other end with higher consciousness. It needed to be like and we need a massive shift in human consciousness. So that's what happened. then interestingly, so for me, when Steve Jobs says dots connect, for me, they always absolutely connect. So from that, that playing, that sitting in my subconscious, playing in there, I went to Peter Diamandis's Abundance 360, which is, he's a futurist thinker and he's part of SpaceX. And when I went there, and he speaks about the massive transformational purpose, and I started thinking about it, and he started talking about, if you really want to do something, you have to solve one of the world's biggest challenges, you'll have to use technology.
Wow.
You can't scale. So no matter how many schools we want to create, the fact that we need real estate and infrastructure limits us. So if we were to take those limits away, so what do we have to minus from a problem and add to the problem for it to be a new solution?
Right.
I finished Peter Diamandis's, and I came back, and I got Gaja Capital called me for a meeting and said, we want to buy your company. So if the universal intelligence was talking to me, there it was. So yeah, so I sold that, finished, and while I was doing my sort of going through my non-compete, non-solicit period, I used that time to up the ante on myself, right? Learn new things, interview 100 thought leaders in the areas of neuroscience, behavioral science, the science of learning, energy science, and the future of the world, and then to create the curriculum around that. So basically, that's what we've done. To create a futuristic curriculum is to say, how do we marry all these things together? Neuroscience, because we want kids to understand about how their brains work,
The brain, yes.
how their brains release certain chemicals, how they can do it at will. Same with their behavior. And while we don't really know what the future holds, I mean, Swati, 2 years ago, we didn't know. I mean, while I used to keep saying asking the right questions is going to be more important than having the right answers, and we both used to keep saying something like that, we knew it was important and it was essential and it was going to be critical, but we didn't know that in light of ChatGPT, how.
Yes, absolutely. Now ChatGPT is all about the right questions. You don't ask the right questions, you get the wrong answer. Absolutely.
So, one of the things with the digital curriculum, we can instantly add, subtract, delete things,
Yes.
as they happen. It's not like having a textbook that is published this year.
Yeah.
2 years, you can't change it.
It
So we
is.
wanted
It
to
is.
move. Sorry?
I said it is a wonderful goal, I would call it, because it's not just a vision, it's goal oriented. And I think parents are ready for something like this. But teachers are going to be the biggest focus of your kind of curriculum, because ultimately it's the teachers who will deliver it. But I think in your kind of a format, I see parents becoming partners, because a lot of these parents will be the first ones to be convinced, and they will join in this journey that their children are going to take. Because when you said neuroscience is in the child's hand, that how I want to release my chemicals, it's just like till now the power was I can move my hands, I can move my feet, I can move my body, but I could do nothing with my brain. The outside world was feeding me things, and that's it. Your curriculum is saying I'm going to give that switch of the brain in the child's hand. And I think that is the cornerstone of the change that you are bringing in the education system. This is wow, really wow.
And we were just saying that if you've got a textbook, you have to wait for the next publication
Yes,
so you're waiting for next year. But for example, we've put Elon Musk's, when his spacecraft didn't take off, but we used it in a way in which we took his messages to his team members, and all his messages were growth mindset messages.
right.
And then we put India's successful
Yes,
mission
Chandrayaan.
Yeah, so anything that happens, in that's of relevance to a child, you can instantly include it
The
in the
curriculum.
session flow, which is, which is what's so important, that we keep curriculum is not fixed, standards are not fixed, assessments are not fixed, that we should be able to adjust and be agile and adapt these very, very quickly.
So you know what? Actually, that education is what the world is today. Today, the world is completely. You don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know how it's going to impact us. So that education system which you are developing is actually keeping the fluidity of life in education. So which means this child will have the cognitive flexibility to adapt, to learn, to relearn, to unlearn at any given time. We say adults need to unlearn, relearn, but uh, relearning, unlearning, and learning is a everyday process, which is what is part of your curriculum. And that is why I think the word futuristic, uh, in today's world, I think that's what the curriculum, it's not only futuristic, it is completely in line with the today that the child is living through. Excellent, excellent, really.
Swati, thank you. It's honestly, it's you've always been a mentor in many ways. I've watched what you've done with the ECA. It's just absolutely magical what you've done. And you know, the the thing about both of us, I think we're so passionate about our craft.
Yes, yes.
So it's, and I want equally kids, whatever craft they choose, that they should be so passionate about it, because only then, when parents tell kids that, or they direct them that this is your direction, or a teacher gives a child direction, inner motivation, you switch off that switch. Inner
Yes.
motivation switches on when the interest is high, when the relevance is high. And when I'm talking to teachers, I say, if you give me a tax document to read, as clever as I may be, I'm going to fail. You give me an exam, I'm going to fail that exam.
Very true. Same here.
And the beauty of the amount of work I do in learning, around neuroscience and all of that, is because I'm not being judged. I'm not doing it to sit a grade.
Not an
I'm,
exam. Yeah.
yeah, I remember I went back to Australia.
Yeah.
I went back to Australia and I went to my professor at college, and my teacher, and I said, whenever I talk to principals, they're way more qualified than I am. I've got a BEd and they've got like masters, PhDs, and etc. etc. Do you think I should do my masters and PhD? So I said, one, the old way is to do your master and PhD theoretically, and the other way is to do your master and PhD through life, and that's what we want for kids, right? The world is going to change so dramatically and so quickly that they
Absolutely.
they have to be, I mean, and you can't be a lifelong learner if you're not excited about learning.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that detachment from learning happens when you lose the love for learning, and that's when you feel, okay, I've learned enough now, and that's it. I won't be able to take in more than this. As they say in neuroscience, we are not even using 50% of the capacity of our brain. So imagine if we all became conscious, how much we could do better with our brains. You spoke about reticular activation system, RAS. That's what advertisement companies do. They ensure that they put it in their ads. They appeal to that emotion in you to hook you onto their product, and then there is subconscious marketing happening. And recently there was an ad by this coffee company. They made this very cute ad about, children at an annual concert telling their parents how you all are killing our environment and all that. And everybody went, oh, ooh, wow, and forwarded that ad multiple times. And when I saw the ad, I said, they're talking about taking care of the environment. Why are they serving that coffee in a paper cup? In that ad, there is coffee being served in a paper cup. So you're actually diluting the whole purpose of the messaging of your ad, but people don't notice that. See, that is where you need to think about what you are watching. Is it really giving you the message, or is it just trying to sell you something? And that's when you said that if that is in your curriculum where children will be able to identify hidden messaging, mixed messaging, then that is true goal of a curriculum of a school, really.
So, Swati, you'd love to know that we actually teach kids about this, what you just said, within the curriculum. We'll show them the ad. We'll show them what's triggering. And I think as educators, I think the greatest thing we can do is, when we're very often having kids feel incomplete,
Yeah,
that they're not enough, that they need to do more to get our acceptance and our love, and that they need to be recognized in school for them to be recognized at home. And it's that consuming scarcity world that is then the advertising world looks at and preys on, that if we buy this, we will feel this. If we have this brand, we will feel this. Um, so there are a couple of questions coming up. So Priyanka's asked, what kind of topics, lessons can be included in today's curriculum for children when it comes to linking with higher consciousness? So the minute kids become more self-aware, they become more self-regulated, they become empathetic. So we're constantly putting kids in other people's shoes. So we'll put a vegetarian and a non-vegetarian shoes, and vice versa. We'll put kids from one country in the shoes of a child in another country, because we seem to have this political worldview that one way is always the right way. So we
yeah,
want kids to have that complexity of thought, that what one country deems as correct is seen as not correct by another. So for higher consciousness learning, there's everything. It's only when you get mastery of yourself, you feel whole and complete within yourself, can you do anything in terms of growth and contribution for the world outside.
absolutely.
Shweta's asking, how can we implement these things in a school where still this kind of curriculum is not into practice? So Shweta, we have powered by Dreamtime Learning curriculum. It's a solution. We give it to you. In giving it to you, we've taken, I looked at all the pain points of the previous curriculum we used to give, which was, teachers had to read these lesson plans and stuff like that. It's completely different. It's flowing because the teachers have the scripts. We believe that if a teacher loves kids, and the thing that we do invest time in is teaching kids growth mindset responses, because we cannot predict every single response. So we'll predict some responses. For example, if we show a kid a thermometer and the teacher says, what is this? And the kids will most likely say a ruler. And then we can respond for that in a growth mindset sort of way. So we can make some adjustments, but majorly we want to teach, or we want teachers to learn our growth mindset responses and reactions. So Abhijit is saying it was something new to learn. Well said, we need to do continuous learning. I just want to know, how can we go on this big and new path of conscious learning? Abhijit, please connect with us at Dreamtime Learning, and we'll power you up with everything that we're doing. For all of those watching, this is my impact work. This is my give back. We have 4 kids. My garbage collector's child is in the school, the building garbage collector. My caretaker from Goa, his daughter's in the school. And we've got 2 kids from rural India who are in the school. And we're watching these kids to understand what gaps may exist. For example, the first thing we realize very quickly is when we have a PTM, the parents are not comfortable to come on and talk to the teachers. So we
Yes.
need to find mentors for these teachers. But this is my investment. The profits from all of this go back into long-term sustainability of being able to reach out to kids across the world. From what grade can we start this? You can start it from play school. Play school nursery is not, we don't have a complete digital curriculum, but Yeah, from play school all the way to grade 8. Next year, we introduce grade 9 and then 10, 11, 12. What needs to be done to improve the social emotional needs of a single child? I'll let Swati take that one.
Single or multiple children, everybody has emotional needs. It's not that if you are a part of a sibling group, you will have better emotional development. I didn't. When I was in my growing years, I am the third child in a group of four children, and I was constantly compared to my elder brother and sister because we were all in the same school, and I was completely different. So I suffered a lot emotionally in spite of being not being an only child. So it's not that only children suffer. This is a myth. It's all about parenting. I suffered emotionally outside, but the minute I would come home, I had my parents boosting me up and telling me how I must appreciate my differences. So it's all about parenting. Single child, multiple children, nobody should feel that blow of self-esteem development. And if a parent understands parenting and child development, no child will ever go through emotional issues.
I'll just add to that. We can do it a lot through stories. There are beautiful, wonderful stories out there. If a kid's ruminating a lot, there's a book called Ruby Has a Worry, and you get kids to um, color their fears and doubts and anxieties and how big they are, and give them size and numbers and all of that. The other thing I just want to caution the parent, because the parent said single parent, and I just put a post on LinkedIn why I allowed my son to travel at the age of 4. My son is an only child. I think one of the things that we're doing differently and not possibly very consciously is we're bubble wrapping our kids. We're overprotecting, over managing, over providing, over everything for them. And trust me, the less you care about their grades, the more you care about their ability to just go out and play, the better their social emotional regulation and well-being will be. What do you say, Swati?
Submarine parenting is what you need to do. A submarine stays under the water unless and comes up only when required. So parents need to become submarines.
I love that. I love that. I've not heard that term before. I've heard
That
helicopter parenting, tiger parenting, all of that, but I've not heard of this one before.
that is thanks to Farzana Doadwala. She once mentioned it, and I said, "I this is lovely."
So Smriti's asking, will developing habits of mind help in building higher consciousness in learners? Absolutely. One of the things we do consistently, and I do it about every 2 years, is I take out a full values list and I say, what are my top 5 values? And I
Hmm.
revisit them because your top 5 values can change. I used to have financial security as one of my top values till I became financially secure. Now I no longer need to have that in my top 5 value list anymore. So one of the things you want to do is, and there are easy tools online if you don't want to be powered by Dreamtime Learning or you don't want to join Dreamtime Learning as a parent. There are tools to help kids work out, firstly, understand what values are, how values drive their outcome of their life,
Yes.
and to then choose them consciously, as Swati says. Another question. Contentment is precious to wake up to, the role of awe and reverence, and the values of peace, joy, and friendship in an ordinary way. And then we can reinvent. Do you agree? We did this in a preschool in Delhi for 15 years. So Nandita, absolutely agree. And one of the greatest things that I learned, and a lot of people said, that they started following me when I started putting gratitude posts up. Um, the gratitude post started when my younger brother's son was diagnosed with ADNP. It's a rare disease, and it means, cognitively and physically and in all ways he's not going to be typical, for want of another word. And it played on me a lot because my younger brother, I tend to, we have a very close connection, and his angst was my angst, and I kind of took it in. And then I suddenly realized that I have so much to be grateful for. I better start finding that. And that's when I started my gratitude posts on my way to Australia. I carried them on, I carried on with them 15 days of my isolation in the hotel.
Yeah, you were under quarantine, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it honestly, it kept me going through all of that. And yeah, so it's absolutely, I agree with you that that is the way to go. Yeah. So Kanta is saying, good evening, ma'am. This is Kanta Keshwani from Ahmedabad. Rise Up Preschools, Motera branch, senior KG education. Please, oh, pleased to see you live. I've been your follower and read your books. That has to be you. You're the one who writes all the books. But
Pleasure to have all these people, and it's really nice, Lina. There is a question I read on somebody who said that can you do this training for all of us? So I think you should do some workshop or something on conscious learning.
Swati, as we were speaking, I actually scribbled down that you and I should start a self-mastery course for,
Wow,
yeah.
wow,
I
that's a
think,
wonderful
yeah, I
idea.
think that's something, I think that's something great that we could do just as a give back.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And all those who feel yes, we should do it, put it in the chat box.
Yes. I'm going to give you another question. Savita's asking, as you said, that parents should become partners because that's what you said. How to do that? Because there are some parents who are very involved and others who do not bother at all.
Well, that's what when I train my teachers, I tell them let's not judge parents. We do the same for every parent, whether they are involved or not involved. It's not our job to tell them how to do their parenting, but it's our job to keep them informed about what's happening in their child's life in school. So you do your bit. Don't expect any participation from those who don't have the time, and those who have more time and participate more, they also should not be viewed, oh my god, Mrs. Khanna is always asking so many questions. You will have to be adaptable. Your cognitive flexibility will have to be in place when it comes to different parenting styles.
Absolutely. Um, Ma'am, good evening. I would request you to answer children who can't multitask. How can we help them learn with the help of subconscious teaching? I'm anti-multitasking, but I'll let you take that one.
Okay. So conscious learning, if you Google on it, it says that doing two tasks at the same time. So when you are reading and writing together, which is actually what education is about, you look at the blackboard and you copy in your book. So you're looking and writing. So there is multitasking which is ingrained in us. Our expectation these days of multitasking has become completely different. Our expectation is watching television and posting a message. That's not multitasking. That's foolishness, because you will make an error. You are trying to hear some content which is coming from somewhere, and at the same time you are thinking of a message, and that's not multitasking. That's the foolish race in which this world has pushed you in, because you are bored, because you were not conscious in the program that you were watching. There is something called conscious viewing also. If you were not interested in the program, switch it off. Why is it running in the background while you were typing? So it is very, very important that let's define multitasking. Multitasking is not about cooking and talking on the phone at the same time. That's not multitasking. That's us being told that we are super women or we are superhumans and we should complete a lot of tasks in the day. Uh, if you are talking while cooking, and we talk about spiritual education, my grandmother used to say when you are cooking, your heart and soul needs to be in it, because what you are thinking at that time becomes the food. So if you are on the mobile phone with somebody and your concentration is not on your cooking, that spiritual element of that is going to go in the stomachs of your family. So no wonder we have so much of angst around us. So it's very important that let's redefine what is multitasking and why do we need it. As Lina said, she's not in favor of it. I do multitasking, but I do multitasking like that only, which is required in education, not this foolishness of doing 3 4 tasks together just because we want to prove something to ourselves or to the world.
So I just want to, Swati, what you defined as multitasking, I speak about it as synthesizing. So when
Yes.
you're doing, yeah, when you're doing that, where you're doing two tasks, that's actually, for me, it's just synthesizing. There's a very interesting interview I did with this guy called Nir Ayal. He's written a book called Indistractable, and I talk to kids about how your focus is is your superpower.
Yeah.
Your and he's got a very interesting concept that I follow called time boxing.
Mm.
So he says it doesn't mean being focused and being productive doesn't mean you don't watch Netflix, but you time box the watching of Netflix. You time box your reading. You time box your playing on the game, playing games. You time box your work. You time box your productivity, your creativity. And I did learn a lot around productivity and did improve my productivity through time boxing. So for anyone
Oh,
interested, look up time boxing. It's a great technique.
okay.
So Priyanka's asking, as teachers, how can we help children from not being affected from peer pressure and help children value their own choices?
That again comes with self confidence. It comes with understanding that I don't need somebody to tell me whether I am good or bad or right or wrong. And it comes from your family practices. It all comes, if your parents have always been about, giving you these tags all the time, praising you, etc., you will then, as you grow older, shift those needs to society. That I need this many number of praises in a day for me to feel as a fulfilled human being. I mean, look what is happening on social media. The minute you put a post, then you judge the post yourself that, oh, my previous post got 60 likes, this one got 600 likes. So I will now put only this kind of content. No. Social media is again your way of communicating with the outside world. You put what you want to communicate. People didn't like it, people liked it. Your self esteem shouldn't suffer because of it. So that confidence comes from intrinsic, it comes from within. That is what we spoke about in Panchakosh. It's all about your inner energy, also having command, you having command and control on your inner energy.
So Swati, I think we've got time for one last question. Could you please suggest how to convince parents who look for only good grades secured by their kids and are least bothered about their values?
Isn't that what we've been struggling with for so long, Lina? But Lina made a whole chain of schools and convinced parents. I have made a whole chain of schools. I started with 8 parents, and we now have around 14,000 parents. And we've managed to convince them. And that's what it's all about. You will have to keep on convincing every parent that comes. What happens is teachers and school owners reach a level of exhaustion that I convince these 20 parents. Now the next batch should come to me convinced. It's never going to happen. Every parent that comes to you, you will have to reconvince them. And that passion has to be in you because you believe in it. So you will,
Absolutely.
if your passion needs to be stronger than their negative passion, it's only when your positive passion is bigger than their negative passion, you will be able to convince them.
Absolutely. So well said, Swati. And I think it's a constant role of educators to be micro educating parents.
Yes.
It's parents don't know. Parents are very overwhelmed. There's an overabundance of information and different thinking around this. And I think you have to actually show the stories of the fact that IQ only counts for so much, EQ counts for so much. And show it through the stories, show it through the examples of people who have actually made that happen. There's more than enough research that it's B graders who rule the world, not A graders, because A graders are too much of perfectionists and they can't really move the dial from here to here. So with that, I think we've come to the end. Swati, I want to thank you so much. And anyone who's interested in Dreamtime Learning as a curriculum, please do write to us,
Yes,
and
please
we'd be
become a
more than
part of
happy.
Dreamtime Learning, because I think that's the way ahead for education. It it is the future, and the faster we get on board the future, the better.
Yeah. So Raj has sort of said, thank you everyone for attending today's session and your active participation. If we were unable to take your question, please feel free to write to us at connect@poweredbydtl.com.
Great.
Repeat that. And if you want the curriculum, write to connect@poweredbydtl.com.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you, Lina. This was an absolutely engaging conversation.
Thank you so much, Swati. And see you in Goa soon.
Absolutely. Bye. Bye. Thank you.